Hi, my name is Sophan. I was asked to give a brief testimony of how God changed my life. I was born at a refugee camp outside of Cambodia. My mother and I were granted asylum to come to America after the Cambodian genocide that killed nearly 2 million people. I was 3 years old when my mom and I came to America, and we were placed in inner city Philadelphia. Growing up, we faced many barriers, such as language, cultural assimilation, literacy. My mom grew up outside the poor countryside of Cambodia and just never learned how to read or write. Shortly after we arrived in America, my mother had an arranged marriage, had 6 kids later, pretty much back to back. I learned responsibilities very quickly at a young age. We also grew up in poverty, received government assistance, lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. I remember moving from one apartment to another, and we slept on the floor, my siblings. We just didn't have a whole lot growing up. I remember working in the blueberry field, even before I was 10 years old, at a young age, just picking blueberries in the blueberry field. If I didn't do that, I would be at home watching my siblings while my parents worked on the field. We also, I grew up in an alcoholic household. We dealt with mental, verbal, and physical abuse. So till this day, I've never met my biological father. It is it's a deep void. That's something that I have had learned to accept, and I'm still processing that. It just wasn't, it's just not your typical family growing up, as a young girl. And to me, I thought this was a perfectly normal childhood life. I didn't know. We grew up going to a Cambodian church. Did not have a relationship with Jesus. It was just something that we did. Parents never told me that they loved me. It was, I think, more of a cultural thing. I sought love and attention in all the wrong places. I didn't know what freedom was like until I started high school. I was involved in the things that some teenagers would go through. I was just in the wrong crowd of friends. I was very rebellious. I was involved in unhealthy dating relationships. I smoked. I was in juvenile detention. Had tattoos, half tattoos, even homemade ones. I lived for the world, basically. If you were to have met me then, you just wouldn't believe who the person I was. At the beginning of my college year, my friend invited me to her church in Philadelphia. I later worked at a Christian summer camp in my community. And there were a group of college students from out of state who volunteered that summer. And I saw and I felt the love of Jesus in their lives. Such an outpouring of God's love through them. And that's something that I've longed for and I wanted in my life. And in that summer, I decided to give my life to Jesus. And I was baptized that same summer. Fast forward a couple years later, met Mark at the same church. We've been married 15 years now. We moved to Seattle a little bit over 10 years ago. 3 kids now. I started going to Terrace Foursquare when the church launched in 2017. And it wasn't until very recently that I experienced the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Just the way that I explain it and just how the experience was for me, it was as if a light switch just went on in my body, and just all of my spiritual senses heightened. In that moment, God became even more real to me, that the living God, He is alive in me, He's breathing life into me, and He is actively working in my life and pursuing me still. My desire is to live in a constant hunger for God's presence and for the Holy Spirit to continue to grow me. Psalm 42, 1-2 says that as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. My soul thirsts for God and for the living God, and for the God who is still alive today and is living inside of me. That is the position of my heart now. I still don't have it all together. There's still a lot of healing from my past and brokenness that still exists in my family in Philly. But I do know that God is my help. He is my present, my eternal hope, even when it seems impossible. God rescued me from a refugee camp outside of Cambodia. He redeemed me outside of a broken and abusive family. And He delivered me out of my dark and rebellious years in high school. He's my Redeemer, my God, who have always been present since the beginning of my life. And I didn't know that. He is my resurrection life. He has changed my life and continuing to change me.